Your relationship is the single greatest catalyst for your evolution, for your growth, for your awareness, for your joy, for your fulfillment. And if your relationship is not arousing you on every single level, then what are you doing? Welcome to the InPowered Life Podcast, a space dedicated to one belief that you have the power within to create everything you seek. So if you are ready to step into a new kind of higher learning, the kind that leads to true personal freedom, hang here with me. I'm your host, Rudi Riekstins, and this is the InPowered Life. Welcome to the InPowered Life Podcast. My name is Rudi Riekstins. I'm joined by my incredible co-host, Anniston Riekstins. And today we want to talk to you about the new earth. If you go on social media, you are guaranteed at some point in time to come across a post where somebody in a deep spiritual circle is referring to the new earth. And we want to demystify that a little bit here for you today. And then we want to break out a few topics that we think are very important for you to have awareness to as we begin to navigate what is and isn't this new earth frequency. And it is essentially just that. It is the raising of your consciousness, the raising of your awareness. I'm a high performance business coach. So I go into organizations and I remind people that we have the power and the ability to pause, to step back, to take an elevated vantage point. And that when you look at a situation in life, in business, from a different elevated state, then you all of a sudden open up your mind to a whole new way of thinking. You see information that wasn't present before. The new earth frequency is about shifting our consciousness to becoming more aware, enlightened. But when I say that, I mean viewing life from a completely different perspective. Anniston, why don't you kick off this episode and tell us where are we diving today and what does this look like to be entering into a new earth frequency?
Well, there is no doubt. We are living in exciting, inspiring, magical times. And yes, intense. And yes, extraordinary and never before seen. And I believe that this is what we all came here for. Truly. Like it's this moment, which is serving to be the greatest moment of expansion in human consciousness that has ever existed on this planet. And we're here for it. So let's just ground into that for a second and really think about how incredible that is. And so, with that, not only is the earth shifting its frequency and elevating its frequency, which we're seeing some growing pains, right? We're seeing a lot of earthquakes, we're seeing a lot of movement underneath the earth, a tectonic plate starting to adjust. We're seeing some pretty extreme weather patterns. And that is all very symptomatic of an earth that is going through, let's say, an energetic growth spurt, like we all are. And because we are connected to earth, we are inextricably connected to earth, that we are also experiencing those in our physical body. We're experiencing those shifts and changes in our mental body, our emotional body, our spiritual body, and all aspects of who we are as a physical being, but also as a spiritual being. So, for those of you that are listening, I just want you to hear, if you've been feeling different, if you've just been kind of feeling off, if you feel like you don't really know which way is up and everything that you used to know is different now. And like that is all par for the course. You are right on time. Everything is flowing as it should. And as our spiritual advisors, if you will, in the sky continue to remind us that the only thing we can control is our energy. And the only thing that we can control is how we approach it. And so Rudy and I have been talking a lot about this time that we're in, how we as spiritual teachers and leaders can best support humanity during this time, knowing that we did not choose this time by accident, and really thinking about the kinds of tools, the topics that we could introduce that will help you shift your perspective, even ever so slightly, so that you are better prepared for the changes that are coming. And one thing that Rudy and I love to teach about, we talk about a lot, is as it relates to relationship. And while, yes, you can go on social media and you see people all over the place, I definitely do on my feed. I don't know about yours, but talking about New Earth and talking about what this is going to look like over the next couple of years as we're evolving into that and reorganizing into that. What I don't see a lot of people talking about is as it relates to marriage. right? We talk about it as it relates to our lives and how we're working and how we're meant to lead and how we're meant to live and how our bodies are going to shift. But what about marriage? Like, what about our partnership? What does this look like in the new era? And that's really what we want to talk about today.
You said something that I want to touch on. If you are at home thinking about your life and you're tired of the way that it has been, and you can't point to any one thing, you just know that there's more. You know it can be better. Then you are starting to open up to this new Earth frequency. And I want to talk about that for a second because that really sounds like something people are doing that are barefoot running around in the foothills somewhere. It sounds incredibly woo woo and so out of touch for so many people. The new Earth frequency is about all of the souls born at this time coming to Earth at a very specific designated point because there is going to be a profound shift in consciousness or awareness. I want you to think about a world where we had no electricity, or where we didn't have telephones, or where we didn't have aeroplanes. And then all of a sudden, there's a shift in awareness, and we tap into information, technology, and all of a sudden, we can get into a tin can, and within hours, we can be in another continent. And that is a complete shift in how we are, how we show up. I want to bring an example forward of where just 5 years ago, Anniston and I worked from home, remote work. And every time we met people in business circles or social gatherings, they would say, "That is so weird. Like, how do you work from home? How do you function like that when you're not in an office? And do you get things done?" Fast forward a year or two from there, and everyone globally is working from home. These are massive, profound shifts in awareness, shifts in consciousness. But the shift that we're talking about is not whether you are getting into a tin can and flying from America to Europe, or whether you're working at work and having to commute, or whether you're working at home. We're talking about an inner shift in your overall awareness. Your consciousness is going to shift, it is going to evolve. I recorded an episode before this one earlier today where I actually tapped into my ability to create and to channel, and I brought a message forward from my guides. And I did it in this setting that I'm going to publish as an episode so you can see what it looks like. And the only reason I mention this is the message that came through was, this is the most exciting time. Like, you chose to be here at a very specific time. And the fact that you're here and that you're listening to this means that you're open and ready. And so I don't want you to think of this conversation as new earth or what does it look like to bring this into your relationship or your marriage, but instead to be curious and to pause and to ask yourself, like, have I been asking, is there more for me in life? Is there more for me in my relationship? Can it be better? And starting to question what we see and what we're experiencing. The reason Aniston and I are going to be speaking about the new earth frequency in relationship, it's because your relationship is the single greatest catalyst for your evolution, for your growth, for your awareness, for your joy, for your fulfillment. And if your relationship is not arousing you on every single level, then what are you doing? And we want to speak into, like, whether you should be pouring into this marriage or whether you should just say, "Hey, thank you. And it's time to do something different." Because I'm going to tell you now that when you come home and you are in partnership with somebody who is actively, openly walking into this new level of consciousness with you, holding your hand, pulling you forward, and the two of you are supporting each other, it becomes the most profound experience where you get to leap forward. I want you to think back to 40, 50, 60 years ago, where it was a man's responsibility to make an income and to come home, and the wife should be in the kitchen and she should be cooking and she should raise the kids. And then we've created this unbelievable shift back to where we have equal rights in work and in freedom and in passion and in purpose. And those are stepping stones to get there. But the real evolution is not where men and women now work in the same place at the same time, but that people come together in partnership and see each other for who they are. so they can bring themselves forward. My wife is constantly putting books in front of me. She's constantly sitting down on a Saturday morning and I'll have HD TV on, and that's my cartoons, if you will. And she'll be like, "Hey, I want to watch this episode on Gaia." And then we'll dive into something for 2 to 3 hours. She will be in her office at 4 o'clock in the morning, reading, meditating, journaling. And then she'll come out at 6 o'clock. And she just shares all of what she's been learning and growing. And I do the same to her. And our relationship is about, hey, you're going to pull me and stretch me in these areas, and I'm going to pull you and stretch you in those areas. And it's the most incredible, incredible way to live your life. My relationship is a catapult that is moving me forward in life. It's propelling me forward in life. And as we start to talk about this today, because we want to really dive into 6 main key areas here for you today. But as we dive into this, I want you to be asking yourself, the forefront of your mind, is your relationship arousing on every level? And is it catapulting you forward? And if it isn't, where can you start to shift how you look at it so you can elevate your way of thinking, so that as you elevate your way of thinking, you're expanding your capacity and your consciousness to believe that there's more?
So I want to start by saying that if you're new to this space, which I know many of you are, that Rudy and I have quite possibly one of the most extraordinary relationships that I know. Now, that sounds a little arrogant, but when I say the word extraordinary, what I'm really talking about, it isn't ordinary. Okay. There's not much about our marriage and how we approach it that is textbook ordinary for where we have been. But for whatever reason, I would say at least about 10 years ago, we started being qualified and going through experiences that led us to achieving each of the pillars we're going to tell you about today. Now, at the time, we didn't know what was happening. I didn't. Sometimes I would be like, why can't we just be like normal people? I would literally say to Rudy, I'm like, everyone else seems to be doing all right. What if fine is fine? What if fine gets to be okay? But we both just had this inner knowing that our relationship was important and it superseded just our own joy and life experience. Like there was something really important happening here. And when people would come into our home, when we started hosting coaching sessions in our home, the things that would come up the most would be people commenting on us as a unit, like our relationship, our marriage. And it would turn into all of these questions about how do you guys communicate better? How do we have the same level of connection that you two have? And that has followed us wherever we go. And whether it be with friends, family, with our clients, definitely within our client relationships, even if we're coaching in business, it tends to come up. So I'm sharing this because I do not want you for a second to think that we're standing on a soapbox and preaching about, oh, this is what's going to be. This has been a journey, like, for both of us, but the beautiful thing is I see it. I can see it so clearly now that people are starting to ask better questions, which means they're actually ready, and because we've gone through this and we've experienced it firsthand and we know how challenging sometimes that can be, and shifting your way of approaching each other and being willing to let go of your resentments and let go of the things that you're holding on to, in sight of creating something different and better for yourself and for your partner, it's I would never use the word easy, but I would use the word rewarding because my gosh, on the other side of this is just like the relationship that we have is like my most treasured, precious thing on the planet. This energy that we've created together is beautiful. And I know it's because we're here to teach this to people, which is why we are showing up today. And so we have 6 pillars that we want to introduce to you. And we'll start with the first one. But first and foremost, this is not a you listen to this and then feel really horrible about your relationship and where you're failing. This is not what this is. Okay. So please know whether you're driving, you're exercising, you're just listening to this, and maybe you have a pen and a paper. What we want to encourage you to do is to become the observer. Okay. We want you to step outside of your relationship for a few minutes. And just as if you were going to view a piece of art and you're looking at every little detail, like separate yourself from the emotion. And instead, if you were an outsider looking in, or if you were stepping outside, what opportunities do you have? Where on the things that we're mentioning are you guys already knocking it out of the park, you and your partner? And where are you in need of some support? Or where are the gaps? Because here's the thing, life is not going to forget about where those gaps are, because the nature of the universe is to bring to light those things where we still hold shadow. And so you don't have to think too hard about where those gaps are because they're going to continue to show up for you. And our goal is to shorten the amount of time for you to have to experience the pattern on the hamster wheel that has kept your marriage or your partnership operating at a certain level. Because the creator energy wants you to expand. It wants you to experience the best that you can of your partnership. And so these pillars are just going to give you an opportunity to open your mind, to take a second look at your relationship, make some notes, and then look at when we get done, we'll give you a couple of tips of how you can start to make some shifts and move forward. But know that you are exactly where you need to be. And we're happy you're here listening to this. So let's go ahead and kick it off with the first pillar. The first shift as it relates to what this new earth marriage is going to look like is sovereignty. Now, I know that word can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but essentially, what sovereignty means is as an individual taking full responsibility for your own healing, emotions, growth, and energy. You are a sovereign being, meaning you are fully aware, you are in full accountability, and you know that you are the co creator of your life and that you are, in essence, whole. When I hear sovereign, I think whole. You are not lacking anything. And so the shift here is that in the past, there's been this essence or this belief that like you complete me. It's that whole Jerry Maguire, I think, you complete me, or it's this whole I'm just looking for someone to complete me because I don't feel complete until I've met this person and then I'll feel complete. And it's kind of a crock of shit. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna say that. Like that was never true. And it always set us up to fail because no one can complete you but you. Like no one can complete you but you. And this is moving into awareness of that conscious awareness and a knowing that when you are feeling incomplete, it is not your partner's job to complete you. It is your job to dig in and go deep. So, what we're going to start seeing are two whole individuals in their sovereignty choosing each other.
The second point is radical honesty. And I want you to really think about what we mean when we use the word radical in front of honesty, because the highest frequency on the planet is when you show up in authenticity. And when you are being truly authentic, you are so much more, I want to say, in your knowing of who you are. There is no incongruence in your words, your feelings, your behaviors, and you can truly connect. Connection is only ever made through vulnerability. And as human beings, we are desperately seeking vulnerability. Aniston just cited some of her favorite movie quotes. Mine was Notting Hill, and I must have watched that, I didn't even know, 100 times as a kid. And it was, I'm just a boy standing in front of a girl, or I'm just a girl standing in front of a boy. You pick your phrase. But it, to me, always sold me that lie that there was this person in front of me that was going to make me feel a certain way and I was going to be whole at that point. But in order for you to be seen as whole, to be accepted as whole, you actually have to show up that way. And we don't do that. You see, we want to be completed by someone that we meet, and we want to be whole when we fall in love and we meet our soulmate, because that's one of the most requested things that I hear when people want to work with me is how do I scale my company, make more money, and how do I find my soulmate, or how do I improve the quality of my relationship? And if we just focused on point number two and you didn't listen to any of the other points, there's six, but if we only focused on just this one point number two, I promise you, you're going to have a profound shift in your relationship, but you'll also have a profound shift in all relationships if you carry this forward. And I want to share something with you because radical honesty is really about you no longer hiding any of your shame, any of your guilt, any of your desires, any of your wants or your needs, and just standing in your truth and in your authenticity. Anniston and I shared a podcast episode years ago of an experience where she was carrying personal guilt and shame over an experience from her past. And it was a sexual trauma, and it carried into our relationship. And although it was many years into our marriage, I want to say 10 years into our marriage before this conversation came up, 10 or 11 years. What did come into our marriage was when we first started dating and then we got married. Every now and again, as I would imagine most couples do, it's like, what's your number? You know, the what's your number? Like, how many people have you had sex with? And what's funny is when that conversation would come up with Aniston in the beginning of our dating, whether I brought it up or whether she brought it up or we were dancing around it, she would shut down and she would be like, I don't want to know what your number is. I don't think you need to know mine. Like, she would just become very closed around that topic. And I just respected that. I was like, well, your past is your past and it is what it is. And so I never asked. It wasn't important to me because I could tell it was important to her. And 11 years into our marriage, she develops a chronic illness that keeps coming up for a number of months. And she then eventually ties that it is caused by trapped shame. I want to remind you 94 to 96% of all illness in the human body is emotion related. And so she's bearing this shame, which is not radical honesty, that is radically hiding a part of yourself. She's in New York City. She phones me one morning. She's in tears and she says, oh my gosh, I just had this realization. Here's why I'm getting sick and I've got to go to work, but let's unpack this when I get home. She goes to work that day. She's in meetings. She gets on a plane. She flies home that evening. We don't talk about it that night. I mean, we touch on it, but not a whole lot. And then on the Saturday morning, she comes and brings me a cup of coffee and says, will you join me outside? And the two of us walk outside onto our patio. We have a dining room table outside and we sit down. And she says, so my first sexual experience was with, and she names the person. And here's what happened. My second was this person. And here was the relationship, and here's how I felt, and here's how it ended. And the third, and she starts to list. And I sat there with just like a mouthful of teeth because never in our marriage had my wife named anyone she had been with or explained the situation or the condition. And when I was about to say something, she interrupted and she just said to me lovingly, she said, let me finish. I want to tell you about every sexual experience or relationship that I've had. And when she finished, she said, because I've buried a lot of this as shame. And what you hide, you keep. And here's the beautiful thing is I've never loved her more. I've never had more compassion for her. I've never had more. I'm trying to dance around the word, but it's truly the deepest level of intimacy and connection because she had nothing to hide. And in this vulnerability, I got to see my wife at a completely different level. And I'm going to tell you now, most people that I know in their relationships, they don't have problems talking about how many people they had sex with. But there is a topic for you in your relationship where you put on a facade. Maybe for you, it's your sexual fantasies. Maybe for you, it's your failures. Maybe for you, it's you filed bankruptcy in your 20s or your 30s and you don't tell your partner, or maybe it's you have a gambling addiction. Whatever it is that you're hiding, I need you to know that unless you choose to be radically honest about your fears, your desires, your passions, your purpose, your failures, everything, your relationship is going to be anchored into the past of where you began to bury whatever it is that you're hiding. I want to move from this section and pass it back to Anniston, but I want to emphasize something I said a moment ago because what you hide, you get to keep, but you don't get to keep it quiet because it is going to come out. We've been speaking into all relationships are this beautiful conscious partnership. And this new earth frequency that we're talking about is not so much that it's new, it's that we're having a newer level of awareness. More people are waking up to it. That your relationship and the things that you hide are meant to be things that you bring out together so that you can speak into, so you can heal, so you can grow, so you can look to your partner for strength, or where they need strength, you can leverage it, yours for them. And this is the beauty of what we're talking about. And so I really want to challenge you today. What is something that you're hiding from your partner? And could you go home and pour them a drink and sit outside, cup of coffee, tea, or otherwise, and say, hey, there's something I'd like to tell you today that I've never shared with you before. And I'm going to tell you now, done in the right way, it is going to be one of the most beautiful and healing conversations if you give them an opportunity to turn around and do the same.
Well, before I move on to the next one, I just want to say that this was a big one for me. And I had a tendency to hide. And interestingly enough, one of my biggest mountains to climb was being seen. And so I spend most of my days supporting women who are yearning to be visible, but can't seem to figure out why they're still wanting that they still have this part of themselves that resists it, or this part of themselves that thinks they're doing all the right things, but they're still remaining somewhat invisible. And it's because energetically, they're broadcasting a signal that's like, I'm hiding. And the energy, this new earth energy that we're moving into, isn't going to have room for hiding. Like truth is a very powerful frequency. If you say, I really want to uplevel my energy, how can I do that? Well, what are you hiding? Let's get it out. Let's shine a light on it. Let's take the power out of it. Let's share it with someone that you trust in a safe space because that alone frees up a tremendous amount of energy. It takes a lot of energy to keep something hidden and it owns you, man. It really does. So I really just wanted to second what Rudy said and urge you, even if you just picked one thing to share today that maybe you haven't shared with anyone before, but with someone that you trust, whether it be your partner or someone else, or even just start by writing it down so you can see it. That's a first step to starting to pull back that energy. So the next pillar of this new era of marriage is emotional responsibility. So this is tied into pretty much everything that Rudy and I teach and that we talk about. It's at the crux of it all. Because until you can see through the illusion, it's kind of like the Matrix, in the Matrix where all of a sudden he can start to see through, oh, wait, he's starting to understand the rules of the game, right? That until you start to see the truth, which is that your relationship, not only your marriage, but pretty much with everyone else, is just a mirror for you. That if someone's triggering you, that they're not making you feel any way. They're just creating an opportunity for what emotion is already inside of you to be activated so you can feel it, so you can heal it, because you cannot heal what you cannot feel. And so this is life being our teacher. Life is always being our teacher. And so when we get triggered, great, amazing, because this is an opportunity for you to offload something where a lot of us walk around with this emotional indigestion and don't even realize it. We haven't fully digested life's experiences, especially the heavily emotional ones. So they become like this stuff that just gets stuck in our field and causes all kinds of gastrointestinal problems, sometimes quite literally. But what you have to do, what life will do is create or orchestrate experiences with the people in your life, especially the one you're married to, because that's the one that really you can't hide from, right? It's just you're in the long haul. And this is where you're going to learn the most. And so this is shifting out of the response or reacting to situations in your marriage where you are triggered and you are saying, you made me feel this way. You made me feel this. And when you did this, that made me feel this way. And this projection and not taking ownership and like not turning that finger around and pointing it at me and saying, okay, but what is it within me that is causing this? Like instead of saying you made me feel this way, you're saying, why am I reacting this way? Why am I reacting to this situation that way? And it's understanding that the goal is never that you're just never going to be triggered again. Being triggered and having an emotional reaction is a part of being here and it will forever be a part of being here. The goal is to shorten the duration of time before you remember, oh, wait a minute, he's just reflecting a part of me. So, what do I need to do about that? What can I do with that so that I can choose a different response? And in choosing a different response, you learn the lesson. And then you get to move on to the next lesson. This is how we grow. I can tell you how we don't grow is when we refuse to take accountability.
So the fourth point is growth and shared evolution. And the reason I am not going to add additional context to what Anniston shared in her third point is because these two really do go together. And so I want you to think about this. What kind of relationship are you in? And how do you approach this relationship? Because there's different kinds of relationships. We are speaking into today creating a relationship that is a conscious partnership. Now, I go into business and I meet different clients, and they might be partners inside of an organization. They might have an executive team, they might have a leadership team, they might have a management team. And every one of these teams is a different form of a container where people are in agreement in one place at one time. And it is my responsibility to support people inside of these containers, and your marriage and or relationship is a container in and of itself. And so the term container is really important because I believe that we are people, souls that have chosen to come together into one space. And we've chosen this very particular space for a very particular reason. I love to share with my clients that my belief is before we are born and before we come into this lifetime, it's almost like we're walking around in this big ballroom up in heaven and we're planning our life. And we need this person to come in and make us feel like a victim. And then we need this person to see us and give us that one liner that really helps us see ourselves and we can step forward and grow. And that in every one of these relationships, it's always about increasing our awareness to who we are, to what we've done, to how we can be better and how we can do more. And so we continue to evolve and to grow. So now imagine you're walking around in this ballroom before you're born in this lifetime, and you know you need a relationship at 16 years old that's going to debilitate you. It's going to make you feel like you're unworthy. You're going to get cheated on, and it's going to break your heart. And it's going to take you a solid 10 years to get over that relationship. And so you're in this big ballroom in heaven and you see someone and you're like, oh my gosh, you would be perfect. Could you come in and do this and break my heart and give me this experience? And this beautiful, benevolent soul says, I would love to give you that experience because it's going to serve you. But in doing that, it's also going to serve me. And so you agree to go into a container for a designated period of time. And that's going to be when you're 16 years old. And then you're going to meet the next container, and then you're going to meet the next person in the next container, and this continues to grow. And I share this because I had three long term relationships before I met Anniston. And I learned a tremendous amount in each of those containers. But you see, those are containers based on growth. And I grew profoundly in each of these relationships. But I grew in like my awareness to what I was worthy of. I grew in how to be a better person. I grew in being able to turn around and really question what I believed I was worthy of having. And it pushed on every single one of my wounds and my triggers that made me look at myself. But the reason I share these three examples is because in each of them, we were not growing together. They were reflecting to me the parts of me I needed to see that I could heal within me. And then I outgrew each of these relationships. But when I met Anniston, our relationship has from the very beginning been a conscious partnership. And when we met each other, it was absolutely a partnership founded and grounded in being equal, in seeing each other, supporting each other, uplifting each other, and helping each other move forward. When we have issues or concerns that come into the relationship, it's not finger pointing, there's no naming and blaming. It's always the reflection back to self. The other day, I woke up and I'd had a dream, and Anniston in my dream had made me angry. And I came downstairs and did my morning routine. And when she walked in and she said to me, oh, how did you sleep? And I said, actually, I had this dream and you did this and said this. And the very next thing out of her mouth was fascinating because dreams are very rarely about an external force. It's actually just reflection back on yourself. So, where are you doing that right now? And that dialogue that I just shared, that exchange is a very common conversation that happens in our home and in our relationship because she wasn't attacking me and she wasn't deflecting and she wasn't saying that wasn't me because it was a dream. She's saying, how did it make you feel in the dream? And where do you feel like that in your real life? Because dreams aren't very literal. And in that moment, it became this beautiful back and forth. I share this with you because our relationship is a container of growth, but it is a container of growth where we are committed to growing together. Repeatedly on the podcast, we have shared couples that grow together, they grow together, meaning you grow in your awareness. You, as the couple, are growing together. Every single year, Anniston and I take a minimum of 2 trips alone, meaning without our kids. One trip is just a sexy trip for the two of us. We do something fun. We do something that we want to do where we're going to just remember what is it like to date each other, to be in love, to be alive. And then the second trip is where we immerse ourselves in environments where we do something that is going to stretch us, spiritually speaking. Last year, we went and meditated for 50 plus hours in a single week. And that really took a tremendous amount of self discipline and work. We had to push each other to go through it. But at the end of it, we both have this experience that we will never forget because it is shared. And so the point of this is really to stretch you to ask yourself, which container are you in? Are you in a container that is reflecting back to you where you need to learn and outgrow? Or are you in a conscious container where your partnership is about growing together?
So the next pillar is energetic and sexual awareness. So this is, I think, where we're going to see a massive shift in the coming years as people are really expanding their consciousness to fully understand the purpose of and the power of sexual energy. And to understand that what we have been given, what we have been conditioned to believe, was not the whole story. And in fact, most of the time, completely falsified in terms of a lot of fear and a lot of shame, a lot of religious guilt as it relates to our sexuality. And anything where you have shame and you have fear, it holds that topic in a very low vibration. And Rudy and I, this has been a journey for us as we have become more conscious and more aware and we've been on our spiritual journey. The farther down the spiritual journey we've gone, while in the outset I would have said the farther down the spiritual journey, the less sexual we will be. Because that was my interpretation, right? To become an enlightened being, one who holds a lot of light, one must distance itself from the importance of the physical body and of anything sexually related. And it's actually the opposite. The farther down the spiritual journey we've gone, the more that we have understood that sexuality and spirituality are one and the same and that it's actually our sexual energy is sacred. And that part of the purpose of monogamy, and this was back in ancient days with our ancestors that understood this, that a part of the purpose of monogamy was bringing together two compatible souls, a man and a woman, or a man and a man, or a woman and a woman, but a man and a woman who, through creating this container of trust and of safety, could then engage in their sexuality together. And in doing so, expand their consciousness. And so I think what's going to happen and what we're starting to see and what Rudy and I have very much experienced in our relationship is that people are going to become aware and remember what sacred union really is. And that our life force energy is tied to our sexual energy, and that we get to become self charging, self refueling. This goes back to the whole sovereignty conversation that when you walk out into the world and you are in need of energy or you are low of energy, you are then taking energy. You're taking energy from people, you're taking energy from the environment. When you can become a self refueling person, essentially, and learn how to recharge and to harness the life force energy that is inside of you and to expand that, then you become pretty limitless. And not to mention, your sexual energy is also tied to your creative energy. And so, this is a really important part of this new earth marriage is bringing consciousness to our sexuality, is bringing healing to any area where you have had shame, where there has been fear or blame or trauma. And believe me, I know this can be a pretty tough topic and very triggering for a lot of people. But yet, we all were designed by this very intelligent creator, and our reproductive body parts are not just for reproducing humans, right? That's a part of the function, but it's really about learning how to work together and how to come together in sacred union, creating a safe space together so that you can, through, sexual intercourse, through being together sexually, that you can not only heal your body, you can learn how to direct that energy to create, to become creators because it is creative energy.
I want you to think about the last time you got aroused and the amount of energy movement that happened in your groin. And you can feel the heat. You can feel the movement of the energy. And then it starts to rise, and you feel your heart starts to race, and the blood starts to move throughout your body, and your skin becomes flush. And I'm not talking about a little arousal, I mean aroused. And now it becomes a full visceral experience, and you haven't even touched anything yet. You're just feeling this movement of explosive energy that happens throughout your body. This is what we're talking about when we talk about the creative power and potential of sexual energy. And sexual energy for me growing up was always around shame. It was this thing that you do because you have to procreate if you want to have children, but it's something you don't talk about. It's something that's dirty. It's something that you only do when you're married. And when you do it when you're married, it's definitely not something that you do and should always have the lights off. And there was just a lot of shame around, like, oh, it's a thing. But in reality, it's the beginning of everything. And although today's episode is not a clickbait, let's talk about sex, let's talk about moving energy, let's talk about the creative power of desire. We just merely want to leave this as a footnote so that the seed can again be planted, because our job is just to make you curious so that you can then explore other areas on your own. We have a number of episodes that we've recorded on the Empowered Life podcast speaking into sexual energy, sexual creation. We've brought in some of the world's foremost experts on sexuality and sex to teach these processes. But I want to just drop this here for a second. If we are, which we are, creative beings, created for the sole purpose to come here and to create, and we were given creative tools, our sexual parts are the process of creation. And if we can create a life through the act of intercourse, and we can also, through the act of harnessing sexual energy, create and manifest, men create through their wives. And I'm not talking about intercourse. Men create through the woman. And every major, beautiful, and profound creation from a man is filtered through a woman because it is how it was designed. And you don't have to know and understand what I just said, but it definitely, definitely does bear some research. And we encourage you do some and you learn a little more. I have the most beautiful and abundant life, and I create some of the most incredible things, and I attribute them to my marriage and how my wife and I approach it. And I'm going to leave that for you there. Point number 6 is where it really brings all of this together, because you can't really talk about sex and energy and creation if you haven't created the sanctity of a true relationship. And that is a relationship that is built on choosing each other. And we get to choose each other every single day. And this is about not looking at your relationship as this thing that you move into, you enter into a relationship, you sign a contract, And this person is going to be this way, and they're going to support you this way, and they're always going to show up for you this way. But instead, looking at your relationship as this ever flowing, abundant, beautiful, and expansive part of life. Last week, I saw a post on social media where somebody had likened wealth to water and said, wealth likes water. And I was like, well, that's curious. I want to know how wealth likes water. And so I listened to the video. And Anniston and I have previously recorded a podcast episode where we actually spoke about how your money is like water. It needs to be moving. And that when you hoard money, you actually make the money in itself turn rancid. Because a swimming pool that has flowing, running water, well, that stays beautiful, clean, and fresh that you can swim in it. But the minute the water stops moving, the water starts to decay. And within a few days, it turns green and then black and then tadpoles and then everything's growing inside and you would never jump into the water. Your relationship is also like that, in that if wealth loves the movement and the flow of this water, and money wants to move through your bank account, money wants to move through opportunity, then so does love. And what I mean is that I just allow the love in my marriage to continue to flow, to continue to grow. And I'm not trying to block it, hoard it, stockpile it for another day. I don't want it to stay the same. I want it to be whatever it is today. And there's so much beauty in that because when we understand that every day I get to choose to be with Anniston, and that's a conscious choice. I choose to work on my partnership with Anniston. And that's an everyday choice, not a choice I made 15 years ago when I said I do. I did it then, but I do it every day and I've done it every day since. And so when I wake up in the mornings, I'm constantly asking myself, how can I surprise my wife today? How can I do something amazing for her today? And every day when she wakes up, she's doing the same thing. She's choosing me consciously. How can I be married to this man today? Not the man that he was, the man he is today. And then how can I surprise him today? How can I show up for him today? And I want you to think about the relationship that you're in and how you're choosing to show up in your relationship. And what are the expectations that you have? And are you choosing each other every single day from love, from respect, from alignment? Or are you still holding on to the way you entered into your relationship back from the very beginning? Because I did not get married out of obligation. I didn't get married because, oh, well, I'm supposed to. It's what you do at a certain age. And then you're supposed to have a certain amount of kids. And then you're supposed to get a house and a white picket fence. I consciously chose to be in a relationship with someone that would see me, value me, appreciate me, support me, uplift me, and that I would have the opportunity to be able to do the same. And every day, I'm constantly looking at her and asking, how can I love her more? How can I love her better? How can I be better? And I actually ask, rate me, how can I be better? And we do that from time to time. And then I'm also never holding her to who she was.
Mhm.
Because she didn't do something in the past and she does it today, I'm not going to judge her for that. And if she did do something and then she stops or she liked something and she doesn't, that gets to be okay too, because it is like water and wealth loves water. And wealth and money are the same thing. They're connected to abundance, which ultimately ties into your belief in your worthiness to have it all.
It's interesting because we think of the day we get married as, one of the greatest turning points in our life, one of the biggest decisions and choices that we do make. But the reality is, and what even science shows, is we aren't the same people we were yesterday, much less 15 years ago or 50 years ago or however long you married, long ago you married your partner. And I think what I love so much about this, the invitation we're all being asked into, which is what this whole episode is about, right? We are casting a vision of a future potential for you, of what this more elevated, conscious way of approaching your relationship will reward you with, what that experience could look like, how just absolutely fulfilling and joy giving and life giving and just the most amazing, I think, gift is being able to walk alongside someone that you love and respect and honor as you both continue to evolve as the souls that you are. Because if you decide, and I want to be really clear about something, Rudy and I very much believe that we always have choice. We do not believe or stand behind, well, once you get married, if you get a divorce, then you're a sinner and you're, like all the bad things. I don't subscribe to that. That's not my belief. I honor anyone's belief. That is not mine. And here's why. Because as souls, we came here to do something. We came here to grow and we came here to evolve. And some of our relationships are going to meet us exactly where we need them to, right? And where you need them to, where they're going to help you work through a very specific issue. But that might be the only purpose for that relationship. That might have been the whole purpose. And so when one partner refuses to grow or to meet you where you're at and to continue to grow and evolve, once you've gained what you needed out of that partnership, it might be that you start to feel the tearing away of that energetic entanglement. And you're going to start feeling it as separation, start feeling it as misalignment. But it doesn't have to be ugly and it doesn't have to be angry and it doesn't have to be you did this and you did that. But I also want to say for those people that are in a relationship that maybe aren't taking full accountability for their part in the process and it feels hard to be in that relationship with that person, it feels really tough and really challenging and you want to run away to someone who's going to be easier. Here's what I want you to know. Wherever you go, there you are. And your lessons are just going to go with you. So you really can't make a wrong choice in terms from your soul's perspective. You're just going to meet someone else who's going to eventually, maybe not in the first month or 6, or maybe even the first 2 years, but mark my words, you will get to learn that lesson. And maybe it won't be your partner, it'll come in somewhere else, but you cannot outrun your curriculum. So the best situation is that whatever situation or relationship that you're in, that you dig deep and you get everything that you came to learn from that person. And maybe, just maybe, what you're going to find is someone that you decide and you choose and you wake up every single day and say, I choose to continue to love and to learn with this individual. I choose to continue to grow with this individual. And it is a daily choice. And you don't have to be in a negative headspace or a negative place in your relationship to have to make that choice every day. Because when you make a choice, you remind yourself that you're a sovereign being. You remind yourself that you always have the freedom and that any prison that you have put yourself into, anything you think you're handcuffed to or stuck to, is actually just an illusion. And it's letting you know that there's something you're avoiding looking at. And the very thing that you're avoiding doing, or the conversation you're avoiding having, or the action that you're avoiding taking because you think it would just be too hard, too much, too painful, too confrontational, is the road to your freedom. And once you get on that side of the issue and you start feeling free and you turn around, you might realize and see the truth of it all along that had nothing to do with your partner and everything to do with you. And so that is all to say that wherever you are in your relationship, whether this conversation is going to inspire you to go deeper into saying yes to what you're being invited to, what we're all collectively being invited to, and starting to move forward and start shifting your behaviors and your perspectives so that you could deepen your relationship, or so that you can bring consciousness to, why am I feeling misaligned? And is this really about him or her, or is it about me? And what am I being invited to look into here? And then you'll know the next best step, but you get to take it consciously. And I do believe it is very possible. And I think we'll see a lot of this, a lot of marriages that are going to be breaking apart, and a lot of marriages that are going to be deepening, and couples that are coming together, but at a very new level. I do believe in conscious uncoupling too, and that it can be just as beautiful in the uncoupling part as it was when you came together. But that is a conscious choice and a decision as well.
Annis and I have partnered with Dr. Thomas Hemingway and his wife, Brooke Hemingway, in the Relationship Upgrade, which is a 4-month container that ends in an extremely intentional, luxurious, all expenses paid vacation at the end with all the couples that are going through this process. It is going to be a small and intimate mastermind where we are going to be walking you through how do you build and curate a conscious partnership. And it's not a mastermind grounded in work and, oh, we're going to have to sit down and do all these things together. It's going to be about an elevating of your awareness within yourself that then creates the capacity to expand more. Annis and I have been going through a financial exercise recently, and I want to use this as the example to underscore why I'm inviting you to join us for the couple upgrade. We have hired a firm, financial firm, who is doing incredible financial planning for us on our behalf and creating all kinds of different models to not only protect ourselves, our family, our children, our legacy, our investments, but also it is creating a container, if you will, a financial container that is built on a solid foundation to be able to receive more. And I share this with you because your ability to receive the level of love relationship that you seek is going to be proportionate to the container's capacity to hold it. And the relationship upgrade is about creating the footprint, the foundation to hold more. And that starts with you believing you're worthy of more. You've been asking the question, you know that there's something else for you. And then systematically, strategically, in a fun, beautiful, creative, and expansive way, you get to really expand your capacity alongside your partner. The relationship upgrade is about people who are ready to step into the remembrance of who they are, who they came here to be, and the impact that they came here to create, and that the relationship plays a profound part of that process, and that it is either going to pull you back or it's going to propel you forward. And we're not looking for couples who are wanting to fix a marriage that is broken and not working. This is for conscious couples who are ready to grow together. If any of what we've shared with you today resonates with you, then I encourage you to click the link in the show notes and book a call if you want to know a little bit more. This is starting in the very beginning of April. And I'm going to tell you now, it is going to be one of the most profound things that you could do in love and in life. And you're worthy of the results that comes at the end of this. Thank you so much for joining us for this incredible episode. I say incredible because it has been truly incredible in my life, in my relationship, and in how I get to show up every single day. It was an honor to record this with my wife. And I hope that you have taken tremendous value from what we've shared here with you today. We're going to leave you with all these seeds, and it's now up to you to water them and allow them to germinate. We love you so much, and we'll catch you in the next episode of the InPowered Life. If this episode gave you clarity, peace, or a perspective shift, hold on to that. And here is how you lock it in. Subscribe so that you keep building momentum week after week. And if you're the kind of person that believes a good message should travel, please leave a review. Reviews aren't just ratings. There are signals that help this reach the people who are ready for it. And then share this episode with somebody you love, someone you lead, or somebody that you were rooting for. Links are in the show notes so that you can connect with me online and on Instagram. Now go out there and take one beautiful, bold, and aligned step and make it count. I'm going to catch you on the next episode of the InPowered Life Podcast.